This week there was the tragic story that a man, Robert Bowers, stepped into a synagogue in the city of Pittsburgh in the United States, opened fire and took the lives of 11 people. Now, since that crime has transpired, that man actually had quite an active social media life, that is, on a particular website known as Gab, which is starting to get a lot of attention because it seems to be one of the most popular sites for people on the alt-right end of the spectrum. So, what is it? What is it like to log on to? Well, we have our panel this week. Ray Johnson is the editor of Junkie, and we have Ariel Bogle, who is the ABC's technology reporter. If I was to open up Gab right now, like compared to something like Twitter or Facebook, what would I be looking at the moment?
So it looks a lot like other social media sites. There's a feed, you create an account with, probably not your real name, hopefully. You post, you reply, there are different threads. It's very similar to a sort of cross of Reddit, Twitter, Facebook in that way. So it was founded by a guy called Andrew Torba, and it was really set up as the free speech, quote unquote, alternative to your Twitters, your Facebooks. He said at the time when he created it that the rise of censorship on these other social media platforms was why he was creating it. So anything goes on Gab. And when I logged in, that was very clear. The Jews are not popular on Gab, neither are African Americans. Andrew Torba would say differently, but I think the proof is you could open up Gab at any time of the day and see truly the worst of what humanity has to offer. But nevertheless, you could get kicked off for doxing, I think was the key thing. So revealing somebody's real name, their address, their family.
So Gab has sort of, in my understanding, it is expanded in part because Twitter and Facebook have, to some degree, forced some of the more extreme personalities on the internet off their platforms.
Yeah, look, it's a place where people go when they've been booted off the other sites, really, or where, the kind of content that they're posting would put them at risk of being booted off those sites. So you are talking about, people like Milo Yiannopoulos, InfoWars' Alex Jones, and the kinds of people that support them. That's, the man that founded the site was a Trump supporter that was fed up by the censorship that he was seeing in his feed. But also you've got a lot of international visitors that may have stricter rules around censorship in their countries. So, there was something going on with Brazil's social media at one point, so there was a big influx of Brazilian people to the site.
Why is it down at the moment?
So after the Pittsburgh shooting that you mentioned, people started digging into this guy who did the shooting, Robert Bowers.
Yep.
And they found a pretty extraordinary trail of posts in Gab from this guy, sort of talking about what he was going to do. There had been a lot of rhetoric from him over the years about Jewish conspiracy theories. He was very much opposed to immigration into the United States. And one thing that he really seized on was the fact that some Jewish charities were helping asylum seekers find new homes in the United States. So he was really fixated on these kinds of issues and was talking in a violent way about these groups and I guess giving us a really unfortunate preview of what he was going to do. So in the wake of this, Gab got really named and shamed, I guess, fingers pointed at it as being part of the radicalization of this guy, Robert Bowers, who had really a small footprint otherwise.
It's not just the doxing that they're against. They obviously don't want to be taking the blame for being able to host and harbour potential terrorists on the site. And they've actually turned around and in some ways taken credit, which is a little bit icky, I would say, for the capture.
Credit?
So they've said, Gab has spent the last 48 hours proudly working with the DOJ and FBI to bring justice to an alleged terrorist. Because of the data that we provided, they now have plenty of evidence for their case. So apparently being a site where you can gather evidence for potential terrorists is a plus side.
And to what extent can responsibility truly be ascribed?
Gab actively courted these types of people. It was billed as, the last refuge of free speech online. And so it was the site for people, aggrieved people that have been booted off other sites. And as we've seen on all types of platforms, Reddit, 4chan included, when you start a certain tone around how you can talk about certain groups on these platforms, people just try and outdo each other and, it just becomes a race to the bottom. On the other hand, I still am not, completely at peace in my soul, I guess, around deplatforming, this idea that a site can be taken down by PayPal or by GoDaddy or by Joylent or whoever else is supporting it technically or financially.
But with something like Gab, which is designed to target a market, at what point do you go, well, you were built for this?
When you set up something that just has such loose boundaries and loose barriers, you are going to attract people that try to push those barriers and boundaries. And not only are they there as individuals, they find each other. That being said, platforms like Gab, up until very recently, have been readily available on the internet. And when you start removing their ability to be readily available, they get pushed into, areas of the deep web, areas of the dark web, where they're not going to show up on search engines, and those conversations are going to happen in a quiet, dark room where they're less likely to recruit people just like themselves.
All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show. It is available right now. We're also talking about Twitter. They might be planning on getting rid of the like button for reasons that surpass all human understanding, and we're going to be talking about that right now on wherever you get your good podcasts. And actually, if you are watching this on TV or on the web, head along to the ABC News YouTube channel, scroll down and leave a comment there about how good we all look. But mostly, leave a comment about what you want the show to cover, because we look through there for ideas for different topics to talk about on the show. So head along to the ABC News YouTube channel, comment away, but mostly about our looks. And with that, I shall leave you. Ariel Bogle, Ray Johnson, thanks so much for being here on the show, and we will catch you next week.